Do you find you use the same words over and over again? To reach a high level of English fluency for your IELTS, job interviews, meetings, or simply your daily life, you need a broad range of vocabulary. One of the easiest ways to quickly expand your vocabulary is to learn words in context. Today you'll learn 200 words you can start using today. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. In this lesson, you'll see a common word you may be familiar with, like show, and then you'll learn a synonym that is more formal and more professional, like demonstrate. You can specifically use these synonyms in more formal and professional situations. Now, often words have different meanings, so this synonym is used when displaying or providing something, often in presentations or studies, which is commonly talked about in the workplace and on your IELTS. So of course you can say the data clearly showed the trend, but to use the synonym, the data clearly demonstrated the trend. It instantly sounds more professional. And learning these synonyms will also help you understand natives. Don't worry about taking these notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description.
Show me how. It graphically demonstrates what happened.
Now let's review mostly and predominantly. Predominantly. This is used to describe something that happens or exists in most cases and is common in academic and professional contexts. You can say the area is mostly residential, so the largest part, or the area is predominantly residential. And I hope you're thinking, I predominantly watch JForrest English lessons. Of course you watch others, but mine make up the most, the largest part. So if that's true, put that's right, put that's right in the comments. Now let's review improve and enhance. This is used to make something better, especially design, quality, or experience. For example, they improved the design of the product. They enhanced the design of the product. It instantly sounds more polished.
My day's improving.
We should enhance this.
Instead of saying think about, you can use consider. And of course, this is used when reflecting on options thoughtfully. So you're giving a lot of thought. You can use this as advice. You should think about all the options before accepting the job, for example. You should consider all the options. So maybe you're learning the synonym and the common word at the exact time in this lesson, and that's amazing. So just like before, let's review say and state. But this is used when expressing something verbally or in writing. For example, he said his opinion clearly. He stated his opinion clearly. You will hear the word state most commonly in written form.
Stating she would be in contact.
She said she's fine.
Now let's review talk about and the synonym discuss. So of course this is used to have a conversation or explanation about something. Let's talk about the next steps. I say that every single day. But I can also say, and frequently do, let's discuss the next steps. So to be honest, the common word is the one that I use more frequently. However, there are many times where I don't want to use a common word. I want to sound more advanced or professional. So having these synonyms in your vocabulary is so important. Let's review live and reside. Do you know this one? Notice that pronunciation. Reside, zide, the voiced sound, reside. This is of course used for where someone lives, but it's often used in a legal or official context. But you can simply say, he lives in a quiet neighborhood, and in an everyday context, he resides in a quiet neighborhood. Let's review change and modify. Now this is used when making a small or precise change. So if I want to make it sound like the changes I made were smaller because I don't want to offend someone that I changed their design or document, I might say modify. So you can say the policy was changed last year. That's ambiguous. We don't know how big or small the changes were. The policy was modified last year. It sounds like small changes were made. Reduce already sounds advanced, but you can also say minimize, minimize. This is used when lowering something as much as possible. So efforts were made to reduce the risk. Of course, you want to reduce the risk. Efforts were made to minimize the risk. To me, this sounds even smaller. Minimize the risk.
Reducing swelling.
I like to minimize risk.
Let's review stop and cease. Cease is used when ending an action, but is often in writing or commands. So the police may tell you to cease something, or a lawyer might tell you to cease something. But you can use it in everyday context and say the noise stopped suddenly, the noise ceased suddenly. Let's review try and attempt. Attempt is used when making an effort, especially serious effort. So you can say he tried to solve the puzzle. He attempted to solve the puzzle. To me, this sounds like he was more serious about it. The effort he put was stronger. He spent more time. He attempted to solve the puzzle.
Maybe they tried and they couldn't.
I didn't say that, they make attempts.
Get better is the everyday word I use if I want to sound a little more formal or professional, or if I'm discussing something with a medical provider, I might use recover instead, which is used when health or a specific condition improves. So he got better quickly from the flu. So got is the past simple of get, of course. He recovered quickly from the flu. So the synonym is what a medical provider or a healthcare provider would use. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Now the opposite, get worse, and the opposite of the synonym, deteriorate, deteriorate. So this is used when health or conditions decline. Her health got worse over time. To sound more official, professional, formal, her health deteriorated over time.
It's gotten worse.
Things are deteriorating.
Now, you can use think carefully, or you can use contemplate, contemplate. So this is used when deeply thinking about something. She thought carefully about moving abroad. She contemplated moving abroad. So to me, one, it sounds more formal, and two, it sounds like the thought behind it is more serious as well. Instead of saying make better, you can use refine, which sounds refined. So this is used to improve something in detail or precision. The process was made better for efficiency. The process was refined for efficiency. So the details of the process were improved, changed, modified, and the reason was for efficiency.
Make better answers. Find it into carbon dust.
Get rid of is part of my daily vocabulary, but I also use eliminate as a synonym. And of course, this is used to remove something unwanted, and to permanently remove something. So they got rid of wasteful spending. So got is the past simple of get. Now, because this sounds more formal, maybe a government got rid of wasteful spending, it would sound more professional to use the word eliminate and say they eliminated wasteful spending. But I would get rid of old clothes because that is the more casual, everyday, in a general context. Let's review, check, and verify. So this is used when confirming something, often in technical or official contexts. Please check your email address, but please verify your email address. You're checking it to make sure it's correct. So check is more ambiguous, and then verify is specific. You're checking for a specific purpose to make sure there are no spelling mistakes or that it's the most recent email address. Now, instead of use up, you can use deplete, and this is an excellent word to have in your vocabulary, especially in the context of resources and when they're used completely. So this can be with environment, energy, or even money. The project used up their budget. So used completely. There's no budget available. The project depleted their budget. You may know this one from all your police dramas on TV. Instead of tell the truth, you can use confess, confess. And this is used when omitting something often related to guilt or honesty. So he told the truth about the mistake. He confessed to the mistake. So it sounds like he was forced to do it, maybe internally because of guilt or externally because of threat of punishment. He confessed to the mistake. Of course, you hear that on TV a lot. Now, instead of big, you can use significant, but this is used to describe something important, large in size, or with a strong effect, not the size of something. So this shirt, I could say, is big on me. I wouldn't say this shirt is significant on me. It doesn't work like that. But you can say the study showed a big increase in temperature. The study showed a significant increase in temperature. So the amount of the increase is large. So you can use significant.
We found significant differences.
It's a big difference.
And let's review small and minor. This is used for something not very important or very small in significance. Again, not a t-shirt. So you might say there was a small delay in the delivery, but small in terms of the significance or importance. There was a minor delay in the delivery. You already know this one. Instead of great, you can say excellent. But it's a reminder to use it because even myself, although I know many synonyms for great, I still use great most of the time. So it's a reminder that we can use other words when we want to sound more formal, more professional, or simply just express a broader range of vocabulary. So of course this describes a higher quality or something stronger. He gave a great presentation at the conference. Make that sound a little stronger. She gave an excellent presentation at the conference. Now this is a synonym, but excellent to me does sound better than great, so just keep that in mind that they're similar. And the opposite, we could say bad and detrimental, but not bad in the sense of he gave a bad presentation. Bad to describe something as harmful, and this is often used with health or policy related. So for health, smoking has bad effects on health. Bad is very common. To sound more advanced, you should absolutely say smoking has detrimental effects on health. Using that in a presentation, job interview, IELTS, or daily life will make you sound very advanced. Now, instead of saying something is easy, you can say it's effortless. So of course, this is used when something requires a little effort or it just feels natural. The transition was easy. So maybe the transition to a new job or from one strategy to another, the transition was easy. The transition was effortless. Effortless.
Well, that was easy.
Effective, but effortless.
Instead of hard, describe something as challenging. So of course this is used when something is difficult, but positive or encouraging. For example, climbing the mountain was a hard task. That sounds more negative. It sounds like a lot of effort and in a negative way. But if I say climbing the mountain was a challenging task, it sounds hard, yes, because challenging is not easy, but we use it in a more positive way. It was challenging and I enjoyed the challenge. Instead of look at, you can use observe. So this is used when watching carefully and is often used in science or analysis. Scientists looked at the behavior of the animals. It sounds a lot more professional and also technical and precise to say scientists observed the behavior of the animals. Now let's review show up and appear. This is used when something becomes visible or present. For example, a rainbow showed up in the sky. To sound more professional, a rainbow appeared in the sky. But I would personally use show up for people appearing because it sounds more natural. Now let's review go and proceed. This is used when continuing or moving forward, often in instructions. So in instructions, someone might say or write, please go to the next page. It sounds more professional to say, please proceed to the next page. Let's review raise and elevate. So this is used when lifting or increasing something, and sometimes it's used metaphorically. So for example, he raised the discussion to a new level. So he elevated the discussion to a new level. In this context, elevated sounds like a very professional and advanced choice. Now let's review fall and decline. So this is used when something decreases, often in reports. So there was a sharp fall in demand, there was a sharp decline in demand. You'll see that in economic and financial news. Instead of famous, you can say prominent. So this is used to describe someone or something well-known or important in a particular area. She is a famous author. She is a prominent author, but maybe it's in a specific area. Instead of increased, you can use boost. Boost. So this is used when something gets bigger and it implies a sharp or helpful increase. So marketing strategies increase the company's sales, so that was helpful. Marketing strategies boosted the company's sales. Instead of need, you can use require when something is necessary. So most jobs need computer skills. Most jobs require computer skills. But remember, in a day-to-day context, I need help. You don't need to say, I require help. So keep in mind when you use these synonyms. Instead of ask, inquire. So this is when requesting information, and often in business or writing. She asked about the job opening. That's perfectly fine. She inquired about the job opening. Sounds more professional and formal. Instead of work, operate in a specific context when something functions and is often technical or professional. So the system works smoothly. In this context, work isn't I work every day. I wouldn't say I operate every day, but the system operates smoothly. So works in the way it's supposed to. Instead of end, you can say conclude. So this is when finishing something, common in reports or speeches. The meeting will end at noon. That sounds wonderful. It sounds what native speakers mostly use. But in a more formal context or certain contexts, you can say the meeting will conclude at noon. But I wouldn't ask my colleague, when does the meeting conclude? This sounds a little too formal in that context, but if I'm presenting, I might say, let's conclude after the next slide.
That's the end.
That concludes this meeting.
Instead of give, you can use provide when offering something. The teacher gave clear instructions. The teacher provided clear instructions. Instead of keep, how about retain? So this is to hold or not lose something. Common in work or legal contexts. Employees may keep unused vacation days. But because this is more of a policy, a legal policy for the company, it sounds more professional to say employees may retain unused vacation days. Instead of a lot, you can use frequently. So to describe something happening many times or often. She goes to the gym a lot. I'm sure you use the word a lot. She frequently goes to the gym, but notice the placement there right before the main verb. She frequently goes to the gym. Instead of a long time, an extended time. So this is used to describe a duration that lasts for a significant amount of time. They waited for a long time. They waited for an extended time. Amazing job learning those synonyms. Now let's keep going and you'll learn 33 words to score a 9.0 on the IELTS. Number 1, feasible. Feasible. This means possible to do easily or conveniently. Now this is commonly used in writing when discussing the practicality, how practical is, proposals or solutions. For example, switching to renewable energy on a large scale may not be feasible, may not be easily or conveniently done in certain regions due to geographic limitations. Or for an everyday example, you could say, when you have a great teacher, getting a high IELTS score becomes feasible, becomes easy to do. Do you agree with that? If you do, put that's right, put that's right in the comments. Number 2, proponent. Proponent. This is a person who advocates for, who supports, a theory, proposal, or course of action. Now, this is frequently seen in discussions about policy, debates, and research in both speaking and writing. For example, proponents of renewable energy. So this is people who support, who advocate for renewable energy, argue that it provides a sustainable alternative to fossil fuels.
I am a proponent of supporting any foundation, any type of group that is being proactive about this.
As you know, I've been a very strong and vocal proponent in the industry regarding both the need and the opportunity to rethink the models from the ground up.
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge proponent of all of us being interdependent versus independent.
Number 3, deploy. Deploy. This means to move into position for action, or it can mean to utilize something in a strategic manner. This is often used in writing to describe the implementation of resources, so the use of resources or strategies in various fields. For example, the government. This is commonly used with government. The government deployed emergency teams. So they put those teams in position or used them strategically. So how did they use them strategically? Perhaps to help tackle the aftermath of the hurricane.
Deploy algorithm.
And accidentally deploy when you were landing.
Deploy the fleet.
Number 4, notable. Notable. This means worthy of attention or notice. It could also simply mean remarkable. This is commonly found in writing to highlight significant differences or achievements. For example, one notable difference, so one significant difference, one important difference between rural and urban lifestyles is the level of access to healthcare facilities.
African soldiers proved to be notable jungle fighters.
And that's one of the more notable aspects of how we painted at this time anyway, certainly through the 1490s.
This well-preserved church is notable due to its high church tower that has been struck by lightning numerous times throughout its history.
Number 5, detrimental. Detrimental. This means causing harm or tending to cause harm. This is used in writing mainly to discuss negative impacts or consequences of policies and actions. You could say while many aspects of technology are beneficial, excessive screen time can have a detrimental effect, a negative effect on mental health. So this is a great word to have that contrast, which is commonly done in writing.
Can be detrimental.
Matt, you're a detriment here.
My bitterness would be detrimental to my recovery.
Number 6, mitigate. Mitigate. This means to make less severe, serious, or painful. This is useful in writing and speaking to discuss ways to reduce negative impacts, especially in environmental contexts, which are common on the IELTS. For example, countries worldwide are investing in renewable energy as a means to mitigate, to reduce the effects of climate change. So to make those effects less serious, to mitigate.
Stop mitigating everyone.
With mitigating circumstances.
While mitigating the health risks.
Number 7, discrepancy. Discrepancy. This is a lack of compatibility or similarity between two or more facts. This is commonly used in writing when analyzing data or discussing research findings. For example, a noticeable discrepancy exists between the reported income levels of urban and rural populations. So the discrepancy is that difference.
Why is there this discrepancy? It seems that we're doing a comparative evaluation.
But typically, I could find a discrepancy. And then I would say, well, I'm not saying it.
And any discrepancy should hopefully be external. So as I go.
Number 8, resilient. Notice that Z, resilient, resilient. If someone is resilient, it means they're able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. This is very useful in speaking and writing when discussing communities or individuals facing challenges, which is very common on the IELTS. For example, communities affected by natural disasters have proven to be remarkably resilient, rebuilding their lives and homes, so they're able to quickly recover from these negative situations.
It's time to embrace a resilient, strong culture of processing, not repressing.
We can push for a safe, kind, resilient, and human digital future.
People are leaving these climate resilient areas for economic reasons.
Number 9, alleviate. Alleviate. This is to make suffering or deficiency or a problem less severe. This is commonly used in writing and speaking to discuss solutions to societal issues like poverty or health. For example, local governments are implementing policies to alleviate, to reduce housing shortages in urban centers. Number 10, vulnerable. Do you know this one? Vulnerable. This means susceptible to physical or emotional harm. Again, this is often used in discussions about social issues, health, and even environmental concerns. You could say older populations are more vulnerable, so they're more susceptible to health issues, which means they get health issues easier and faster, vulnerable, especially during severe weather conditions.
He's vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Being vulnerable.
Number 11, paradigm. This one is very common. Paradigm. This is a typical example or pattern of something. You can think of it as a model. This is frequently found in writing to discuss shifts in thinking or approaches. You could say the adoption of digital technology in classrooms represents a significant paradigm shift. So a shift in thinking in education.
Is that it's a paradigm that's trying to hold us back.
So it's kind of a new paradigm that actually seems to unlock things not only in fundamental physics, but also in the foundations of mathematics and computer science, and possibly in areas like biology and economics as well.
I believe it's time to reject that old paradigm and realize that our fates are linked.
Number 12, viable. Viable. This means capable of working successfully. It can also mean feasible. So it's very important to learn alternatives, synonyms, because you'll commonly see them. And if you want to discuss these same issues, you can use an alternative word, a synonym. So now we have viable. This is used in discussions about sustainability and practical solutions. For example, solar power, you could say, is becoming a viable alternative to traditional energy sources in many sunny regions, at least. Number 13, benign. Notice that silent G, benign, benign. This means having no significant harm or adverse effect, negative effect. This is commonly used in discussions about impacts and effects to talk about something not having an effect. For example, despite initial fears, the new construction projects are expected to have a benign effect on local wildlife. So it means the new construction projects don't have an effect. They don't have a significant effect. They have a benign effect.
It's benign.
Were they benign?
Fine and benign.
Number 14, conducive. Conducive. This means making a certain situation or outcome likely or possible. This is common in discussions about environments that encourage certain behaviors or outcomes. For example, students suggest that a clutter-free space, a space free of clutter, free of things, distracting things, is conducive to better concentration and learning. So it helps you achieve that outcome.
It's not conducive to health.
Atmosphere wasn't conducive, right?
Isn't conducive to rhyming well.
Number 15, incentive. Incentive. Do you know this one? This is a thing that motivates or encourages someone to do something. This is used in discussions about economics, business, and public policy. You hear this frequently. For example, to reduce emissions, the government introduced financial incentives for companies investing in clean energy. So those companies will get something in return, an incentive, if they invest in clean energy. Number 16, compile. Compile. This means to produce by assembling information and other sources. This is often used in academic writing and research discussions. For example, the researchers compiled, so gathered together, compiled data from numerous sources to ensure a comprehensive analysis.
Compiled them in our data processors.
And combined it with compilation.
Who compiled this map?
17, contradictory. Contradictory. This means mutually opposed or inconsistent. This is used in writing when discussing conflicting ideas or conflicting data. For example, the study presents contradictory findings, with one portion indicating benefits and another highlighting potential risks. So they're opposed to each other. Risks and benefits and risks, they're opposed, so it's contradictory.
Saying that out loud almost sounds contradictory. Upside and grief.
And honestly, our physics is telling us a lot of contradictory things.
They allow us to interpret its complex and contradictory signals.
Number 18, foster. Foster. This is to encourage or promote the development of something, and usually something good. And this is commonly used in discussions about education and social policies. Educational institutions should foster creativity, encourage creativity because it is positive, and critical thinking in their students. Number 19, retention. Retention. This is the continued possession, use, or control of something. This is used in writing when discussing education and employment practices, very common in employment. For example, employee retention, the ability to retain, keep employees. Employee retention remains a priority. As high turnover, employees leaving, as high turnover can disrupt team dynamics. Number 20, depict. Depict. This is to represent by a drawing, painting, or other art form. This is common in discussions about art and literature, which is common in writing tasks. For example, art from this period typically depicts scenes. So in that art, you see this scene represented. So depicts scenes of everyday life, showcasing rural traditions.
Inside the church, the paintings depict scenes from the Old and New Testaments and effigies of patron saints.
Would depict it as an illustration of the flexibility and wisdom of common law adjudication.
The paintings depict the image of a chair in various stages of completion or dissolution.
21, to steer clear of. So notice here we have a phrase, to steer clear of something. This means to avoid someone or something. This is used in speaking, and you can use it to give advice or recommendations, which is very common on IELTS. For example, health professionals often advise patients to steer clear of, to avoid processed foods to maintain overall well-being. 22, solely. Solely. This means not involving anyone or anything else. It can also be a replacement to only. This is useful in writing to clarify specific points or responsibilities. For example, the success of the project does not solely depend on funding. So it does not only depend on funding, but also on effective management. So this is a nice complex sentence, and you can replace only with solely. 23, abundant. Abundant. This means existing or available in large quantities. It also means plentiful. This is commonly used in discussions about resources and again, environments. The country is known for its abundant natural resources, particularly oil and timber.
Public space must be as free and abundant as the air we breathe.
Fishing. Near the village, seals and caribou were abundant.
To speak of, it does have abundant land and abundant sun and wind. We can't all duplicate that.
24, sustainability. Sustainability. This is the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level. This frequently appears in discussions about environmental issues and development. Investing in renewable resources is critical for the sustainability of our environment. You will absolutely hear this word and you should use it as well.
Biodiversity can contribute to the sustainability of a community.
And I think the main way I think you should look at it is about sustainability.
Sustainability, it's become something that a lot of people in the world are striving for because we recognize what's going on with the world these days.
25, assess. Assess. This means to evaluate or estimate the nature, ability, or quality of something. This is common in writing when discussing evaluations in education and business. For example, teachers assess students' understanding through regular tests and assignments.
It assesses us.
Assess your options.
Interesting assessment.
26, target. Target. This is an objective or result toward which efforts are directed. So you direct your efforts toward a target. This is commonly used in writing, especially in essays discussing your goals and objectives. You could say the initiative targets a 25% reduction in carbon emissions within 5 years. So notice here it's a verb. The initiative targets, to target. This is also a noun, a target. The target is a 25% reduction. 27, elicit. Elicit. This is to get a response, answer, or fact from someone, often through questioning or discussion. This is commonly used in writing when discussing studies, research, or data. For example, the questions were designed to elicit authentic responses, so to get real, honest responses from participants. Number 28, decipher. Decipher. This means to interpret or to make sense of something that is difficult to understand. A synonym is to decode, to decipher, to decode. This is commonly used in writing when discussing the meaning of someone or something. For example, scholars spent decades attempting to decipher the ancient script, so attempting to understand the meaning of the ancient script.
Professor Arm wants to decipher which data can lead to discriminatory actions or privacy invasions, and to set safeguards for a better protection of human subjects in data science.
Students with hearing loss rely more heavily on visual cues to decipher what is being said.
And now we have the capacity to decipher life in a way we never did before.
29, fluctuate. Fluctuate. This means to change or vary irregularly, so not by following a pattern, and often in amount or level. This is commonly used when discussing the results or current state of something. For example, the stock market fluctuates. It's up, it's down, and it's not a regular pattern. It's irregular. The stock market fluctuates dramatically in response to world events.
Any weight fluctuations?
His weight fluctuates.
Any weight fluctuations?
Number 30, outline. Outline. This is to give a summary of something and is often used in writing to present main ideas or structures clearly. For example, the professor outlined the main points of the lecture at the beginning.
Just the outline. Anything you outline with this, I just outlined for you.
31, promote. Promote. This means to support or actively encourage. This is frequent in discussions about public health, education, and social initiatives. For example, government campaigns often promote healthier lifestyles to reduce healthcare costs. 32, habitat. Habitat. This is the natural environment in which an organism lives. This is commonly used in discussions about ecology and conservation. For example, protecting forests is essential to preserving the habitats, the homes of numerous species. 33, augment. Augment. This is to make something larger, greater, or more intense. This is common in speaking and writing to discuss increases or improvements in systems, infrastructures, or even skills. For example, the government allocated additional funds to augment public health services, so to help improve the size or state of these public health services in response to rising demands. Wow, you have already learned so much. Now you'll learn 20 words that are very common on the IELTS for both speaking and writing. Let's review conundrum. Do you know this noun? Conundrum. Conundrum. This is a confusing and difficult problem or question. Now remember, you can use all these words in both writing and speaking. So let me first share some examples for writing and then for speaking. This presents a conundrum. This is a noun, so you need an article. A conundrum for policymakers trying to balance economic growth with environmental sustainability. So remember, a confusing or difficult situation. You can speak of it as the conundrum. It's a unique one. The conundrum of rising tuition fees versus access to education remains unresolved in many countries. Or in speaking, you can say, choosing between studying abroad and staying in my country was a real conundrum for me. So you can use real to intensify it. Or you can use the collocation I often face the conundrum of how to balance my studies and part-time work. Let's review undoubtedly, undoubtedly, undoubtedly. This is an adverb. It means without doubt, or you can think of it as certainly or clearly true. You can use this to start your sentence. Undoubtedly, technology has transformed the way we communicate. I'm sure you would agree with that. Or climate change is undoubtedly one of the greatest challenges of our time. So notice here it comes after the verb to be. Or that was undoubtedly the most difficult project I've ever managed. Or how about this one? She is undoubtedly the best teacher I've ever had. Hopefully you're thinking that right now with my lessons and me as your teacher. So if you're thinking that, put that's right, put that's right in the comments. Let's review tendency. Tendency. This is a likelihood to behave in a certain way or to happen regularly. For example, there is a growing tendency. So a tendency and then growing describes it. A growing tendency for people to shop online rather than in physical stores. It's happening more often as a routine event. Young adults show a tendency. A tendency is a noun, so you need a verb. You can use show a tendency to delay marriage and parenthood. Again, useful to talk about trends. I have a tendency to overthink things before making a decision. Or my brother has a tendency, so notice the verb have. My brother has a tendency to leave things until the last minute. It's a routine for him. How about fluctuate? Notice that pronunciation, fluctuate, fluctuate. This means to rise and fall irregularly or to vary over time. You could say the price of oil tends to fluctuate due to global demand and supply, or unemployment rates can fluctuate depending on economic conditions. My mood always fluctuates. It's a verb, so notice I added that as because it fluctuates during exam season. Up and down, positive, negative, happy, sad. The weather here fluctuates between hot and cold throughout the year. How about albeit? Albeit, albeit. This means although or even though. So you can say the solution was effective, albeit expensive. So we have a positive and then a negative, expensive, albeit expensive. The campaign succeeded, albeit with limited resources. I enjoyed the movie, albeit it was a bit too long, so you can still use this in an everyday context. It does sound more formal. The weather was nice, albeit slightly cold for my taste. Underscore, underscore. This means to emphasize or highlight the importance of something. The report underscored, you need to conjugate that verb, the report underscored the need for urgent climate action. It highlighted it. These findings underscore, in the present simple, the value of early childhood education. Or, I want to underscore, I want to highlight, to emphasize, I want to underscore how much this opportunity means to me. Or my father always underscored the importance of a clean room. Facilitate, facilitate. This is a must-know formal verb. It means to make an action or process easier or more efficient. You can say technology can facilitate faster communication between remote teams. It makes it easier, or it makes it happen. Governments must facilitate investment in public infrastructure. You can say online tools really facilitate learning for students like me. That sounds formal and professional. My university tries to facilitate student exchange programs. They try to make them happen or happen easier, faster. How about feasible? Feasible. This means possible, practical, and likely to succeed. Solar energy is a feasible alternative. So we have an alternative, and then feasible is the adjective, a feasible alternative to fossil fuels. Building more public housing is a feasible way. Again, a feasible way to reduce homelessness. Or, I think it is feasible, to be feasible, to work part-time while studying. Starting my own business someday feels feasible, albeit challenging. Albeit challenging. How about mitigate? Mitigate. This means to make something less severe, harmful, or painful. Policies are needed to mitigate climate change. So you mitigate something. Planting more trees can help mitigate something, urban air pollution. Or you can say to mitigate stress. Notice I'm starting with the infinitive, which is a purpose clause, in order to. To mitigate stress, I exercise every morning. Or drinking water, a gerund statement, drinking water helps mitigate the effects of jet lag for me. Let's review paramount. Paramount. This means more important than anything else, or of greatest importance. Public safety should be of paramount concern, of the most important concern, above every other concern, of paramount concern. Education is paramount, so to be paramount to a country's long-term success. Or you can say health is paramount to me. It sounds more advanced than saying health is important to me. Health is paramount to me, so I always make time to work out. It's paramount, again, to be paramount, it's paramount that I stay focused before my exams. Let's review prevalent. Prevalent. This means widespread or commonly occurring. Obesity is becoming increasingly prevalent. So you can have to be or to become to show that process is becoming increasingly prevalent, so more and more prevalent. Or you could say a prevalent belief is that success comes only from hard work. You can say internet scams are quite prevalent these days. So to be prevalent, and then quite intensifies it, are quite prevalent these days. That style of music is especially prevalent among young people. So again, to be prevalent. Let's review robust. 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 This means strong and effective in all conditions or situations. This often describes the economy. A robust economy can withstand global financial shocks. The study uses a robust methodology. So here it's describing methodology, a robust methodology to ensure accuracy. Or you might say, I prefer a robust workout routine that challenges me. And you can say, the laptop I bought is extremely robust and durable. So it absolutely describes everyday objects like a laptop or a phone. Let's review allocate. I've already used this in example sentences. It's extremely important to know in a more formal context. To allocate. This means to distribute resources or duties for a particular purpose. Government should allocate more funds to education and healthcare. So allocate should contribute or disperse that resource. The company allocated a budget specifically for marketing this year. So they have all their money and then they take a part and allocate it to a specific purpose, marketing. Or you can say, I try to allocate enough time each day for studying English. Hopefully you say that. Or my manager allocated different tasks to each team member. So it's often used to describe distribution of work. You can think of that as tasks or projects. Let's review compulsory. Compulsory. This means required by law or rule. So you can think of it as mandatory. Education is compulsory for children up to age 16 in many countries. It's a requirement by law or rule. Wearing seatbelts should be compulsory for all passengers. It should be a law. In my school, uniforms were compulsory. So you can use this to talk about things you were required to do as a child or even now as an adult. Physical education used to be a compulsory subject. If it's a compulsory subject, it's an alternative word to mandatory, not an option. It's compulsory. Let's review scarce. Scarce. This means in short supply, so there's not enough to meet demand. Clean water is becoming scarce in some regions. So this is often used to talk about resources. Housing in urban areas is often scarce and expensive, so to be. During the pandemic, masks were scarce. This is in the past and our subject is masks, so it needs to match the plural subject. Jobs in my field are scarce. So again, jobs is plural. They are scarce, to be scarce, especially for beginners. Let's review predominantly. Predominantly. This is an alternative to mainly or for the most part, and it sounds more formal. The region is predominantly agricultural. So the region is mostly agricultural. This approach is predominantly used. So is used and then predominantly tells you how. The approach is predominantly used in developed countries. Or you can say my neighborhood is predominantly residential. So you can use this to describe situations in your daily routine. Even casual situations like I predominantly listen to rock music, but I like pop too. So you can use this to talk about your preferences. Let's review enable. Enable, I've already used this in examples as well. It's so important to use this formal verb in situations like your IELTS. This means to make it possible for something to happen or be done. The new policy will enable more students to access education, so to enable something. Technology enables, we have technology it, so we need to add that S in the present simple. Technology enables companies to do something, so you need your infinitive, to work more efficiently. Or studying online enabled me to work at the same time. So you can enable someone to do something. A second job enabled my parents, someone, to do, the infinitive, to pay for my education. It's how it happened. Let's review consequently. Consequently. This is an alternative to as a result or therefore. Many factories closed and consequently, as a result, therefore, unemployment rose. So unemployment rose because the factories closed. Prices increased, consequently, fewer people could afford homes. It sounds more formal than saying fewer people could afford homes because. I didn't prepare well. Well, what's the result? Consequently, I failed the test. Or he overslept. And what was the result? And consequently missed his flight. Let's review moreover. Moreover. This means in addition or besides. It sounds more formal. The plan is expensive. Moreover, it lacks public support. So when you want to add an additional point. Now, if you already had a full statement and you want to provide another one, you can start your sentence with moreover. Moreover, renewable energy reduces long-term environmental costs. So this assumes you already said something about renewable energy. In a more everyday context, you can say, I enjoy cooking. Moreover, it helps me relax. So you're just providing another benefit. She's a good student. Moreover, she volunteers every weekend. So it can make two simple statements sound way more advanced by connecting them together. Let's review nowadays. Nowadays. This means at the present time, and it's in contrast to the past. Pay attention to the sentence structure. You can start your sentence nowadays, and there's always an S. Nowadays, people rely heavily on AI. This sounds like it's happening now, but it wasn't happening in the past. You can also have a subject nowadays verb. Many people nowadays choose to live abroad. Again, you're making a contrast to the past. I use ChatGPT instead of Google nowadays. It's also possible to put it at the end. Keep in mind, it sounds slightly more casual at the end of a statement. So in your spoken exam, if you're in the more casual part, you can absolutely put it at the end, but for more formal writing, I recommend at the beginning. Nowadays, it's common to work remotely. And remember, you're making a contrast to the past. Now let's focus on speaking. You'll learn 30 advanced phrases to answer common IELTS questions. Of course, on the IELTS, they're going to ask you, where do you live? You can say, I was born and raised in Winnipeg. That's where I was born and raised. Did you know that? I was born and raised. To be born and raised in. Now here your verb is to be, so of course you need to conjugate it in the past simple because it's a completed past action. I was born and raised in, and then you can state your city or your country. You can add on to this to make it sound more complex, to make you sound more advanced. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, but now I live in Ottawa. Go even further and say, I've lived here for over 10 years. Now notice I used the present perfect. You can also use the present perfect continuous only for the verbs live, work, and study. And this is for an action that started in the past and continues until now. So in the present perfect continuous, I've been living here for over 10 years. You can use for plus the specific number of years. You can even say 4 years, several years, many years, a number of years. All of those are possibilities. Now let's move on to tell me about your work. You can say, I'm an engineer. I know this is a very simple sentence, but most students get it wrong because they forget the article. You must use an article before your job title. Most likely you're going to use a or an, but it is possible to use the article the. This is when there is only one position in the organization and you have that one position. For example, I'm the executive director. So there's only one executive director and that's me. Now, if we use the, it's more common to explain what the organization is or what the company is. But if you include just your job title with a or an, you can, but you don't need to. But if you use the, make sure you state your organization. Now add to this and add a general statement about your specific job. Being an engineer is rewarding. Notice here, being starts the sentence because it's a gerund statement. Gerund statements will absolutely make you sound more advanced. You could say, I love using my analytical skills to solve complex problems. Love is a verb of preference, so you need the verb of preference plus a gerund. Love using. You could say, I enjoy collaborating with my team. Enjoy is a verb of preference, so you need the gerund. I enjoy collaborating with my team and brainstorming unique solutions to complex problems. So sure, you could say brainstorming solutions to problems, but adding adjectives makes you sound more advanced. You just mentioned something positive about your work. Why not make a contrasting statement and start with however? This is a transition word that we use to make a contrast, and using transition words will make you sound so advanced. However, being an engineer also has its challenges. So before we had positives about being an engineer, however, and now a negative about being an engineer, a contrast. So now you can share one of those challenges, specifically another transition word to make you sound advanced. Specifically, I work around the clock to meet tight deadlines. To work around the clock is an expression, and using expressions really shows you understand the language more at an advanced native level. And of course, to work around the clock, you can just imagine you work continuously, you work non-stop. Now let's talk about hobbies. You can begin with a gerund statement that expresses your opinion on hobbies. In my opinion, having hobbies is integral to living a fulfilling life. So our gerund statement is having hobbies is integral to, but then I just added on to that by expressing my opinion. So let's review some opinion words. Of course, in my opinion, in my view, from my perspective. Notice here, from my perspective. Personally, I think that. Have at least 4 different opinion words. You can use these 4 in your vocabulary when you go for your IELTS. Now let's get back to hobbies. You made your general statement, your gerund statement beginning with an opinion word. Now you can state your specific hobby. I'm an avid hiker, or maybe I'm an avid cyclist, guitar player, tennis player, whatever your hobby is. So here the structure is to be an avid, and then you need a noun. And this means you have a strong interest, passion, or enthusiasm for that activity. Now you can make a gerund statement about why you enjoy this activity. Hiking gives me the opportunity to disconnect from my devices and enjoy the beauty of nature. Now notice that the gerund statement started with the verb hiking. You can also start a gerund statement with the noun. For example, guitar. Guitar gives me the opportunity to. You could say playing guitar, so you're using the verb form or the noun form with guitar. Both are correct. Now let's say you don't have any hobbies. Don't worry, you can still answer this question in a very advanced way. You can say, until now, my focus has been on my career. However, I'm considering taking up, and then an activity, taking up drawing. So notice we have our present perfect. My focus has been, because the action started in the past and continues until now. Take up is the phrasal verb we use specifically with hobbies and activities to mean start. And notice consider plus gerund. I'm considering, that's in the present continuous. I'm considering taking up. Take is in the gerund because consider plus gerund. You could also say, however, I'd love to take up drawing. The expression here is, I would love, and then infinitive. Perhaps it's simpler to remember and it still sounds advanced, so feel free to use this alternative. Now you can still add on a gerund statement about drawing, but use the future simple because you're not doing the activity right now. Drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You could say, I'm confident that, or I'm hopeful that drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You will sound very advanced. Now let's move on to tell me about your family. You can say, I'm from a close-knit family. Close-knit. Notice that pronunciation, close-knit. This is an adjective that describes the family. Now, this is the same as saying, my family and I are very close. My family and I. This is the subject we. My family and I are very close. You can say everyone in my family gets along because everyone is conjugated as a singular. Everyone gets along really well, or use extremely well to sound more advanced. Here's a great expression. Everyone says, I take after my mom in looks, and I take after my dad in personality. When you take after someone, it means that you resemble them physically. So if you have a photo of you and your mom and people say, oh, I see the similarities, you take after your mom because your mom came first, and maybe your mom takes after your grandmother, etc. But for personality, you can use this as well. So maybe your dad is very funny and you are very funny, so you take after your dad in personality. A great phrasal verb to use on the IELTS to sound very advanced. Now let's move on to talking about travel. You can say, I'd love, I would love, I'd love the opportunity to see Egypt, to travel to. Notice, travel to Egypt, but see Egypt, visit Egypt. So know when certain verbs require additional prepositions. Travel to a location, visit a location. If I could travel anywhere, I'd choose Egypt. This is our second conditional because it's hypothetical. And notice we have modal plus base verb. Don't use the infinitive, modal plus base verb. Of course, you can use a gerund statement. Visiting Egypt is at the top of my list. Imagine you have a list of places you want to visit and Egypt is at the top. You can make this more advanced by using the present perfect. Traveling to Egypt has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember. An action that started in the past and continues until now. Now, why not use an opinion word? From my perspective, the pyramids are one of our world's greatest treasures. So you're sharing an opinion that reinforces why you want to visit Egypt. You can go on and say, and I'd revel in the opportunity to see them with my own eyes. The expression is to revel in the opportunity and then your infinitive, to see them. This is a very advanced way of saying, I would thoroughly enjoy seeing the pyramids. Now, as a bonus, let me share some phrases that you can use when you want to clarify your answer. So you're answering and you realize that the words aren't coming out very well. You can say, what I'm trying to say is, and then you can change your thought. You can express your thought a different way. What I mean is, what I'm getting at is, what I'm trying to get at is, to put it another way, in other words, and then you communicate your idea. I suggest memorizing 4 of these because they will be very helpful when you're taking your IELTS. Let's keep focusing on speaking. You'll learn 35 advanced phrases to start your answer. First, let's talk about preferences. This is when you must choose between 2 or more options. For example, do you prefer to study in the morning or at night? You have to express your preference. To start your answer, you can say, I'd say. This is I would say. I'd say I generally prefer. So that's your start to the answer, and then you state your preference. I'd say I generally prefer studying in the morning. You can add on over at night, so you're using both of the options and stating your preference. An alternative, I tend to study in the morning more than at night. So here you're saying what your routine is, because when you tend to do something, it means you do it most of the time. Or you can use most of the time as an alternative. Most of the time I study at night. Or you can say I'm most alert in the morning, so that's when I study. Notice here, you're providing the reason first, and then you're stating what your preference is. Or you can also contrast your current state to a past and use I used to. I used to, and then your base verb. I used to prefer evenings, but my work schedule has changed, so now I study in the mornings. Now, of course, this is just the beginning to your answer. You have to go on and then give more information about your preference. Now let's talk about opinions. So of course, when you're sharing what you think, if you agree or disagree, or your general view. So the question might be, do you think children should learn to cook at school? So you have to share your opinion. Of course, you can say, in my opinion, in my opinion. This is the start. And I recommend in spoken English, you take a small pause because that reflects the comma. In my opinion, children shouldn't learn to cook at school. And of course, you need to go on and explain your opinion. But now you know how to instantly start your answer. You can say, it depends on the situation, but I'd say children should learn to cook at school. Notice what I did here. I stated my preference, but I started with, it depends on the situation. So I'm letting the person know that I'm open to considering other views, or I'm open to considering a specific situation where the opposite is true. And you've already learned, but I'd say, I would say. In spoken English, I'd say, but I'd say children should learn to cook at school. You can say, to be honest. This is a great way to start, and especially since it gives you a second to think about what you're going to say next. To be honest, again, a short pause. To be honest, I'm completely opposed to teaching children how to cook at school. So you can use to be honest when you're about to share something very directly, or perhaps it's not the opinion that most people have. Instead of to be honest, you can use honestly. They're the same. You can use them interchangeably. Honestly, I completely support teaching children how to cook at school. A great starter that natives use in both professional and casual situations is, as far as I'm concerned. This is longer, so make sure you get all those words. As far as, I'm, the verb to be conjugated. As far as I'm concerned, with a soft D at the end. As far as I'm concerned, this is an alternative to in my opinion or I think. As far as I'm concerned, children should focus on the most important academic subjects at school. Let's move on to past experiences. So this is when you're describing a time or talking about memories. So someone may ask you, describe a time when you traveled somewhere new. That's definitely an IELTS style question. In a job interview, it could absolutely be describe a time when you handled a difficult situation. So think about how you can adapt these in your day-to-day life so you can use them more than just on a language exam or just in a job interview. Now, the key here is that the situation is in the past. So you can say, I remember. Remember is in the present simple. I remember back in 2019. So you can say, I remember in 2019, but if you say back in 2019, using back in emphasizes that you think this was a long time ago. I remember back in 2019 when I took my first trip abroad. Of course, remember, this is how you start your sentence, how you start your answer. You still then need to provide the details of your answer. Or you can say, one time that really stands out. This is definitely the way a native would answer. One time, so one time represents the time you traveled abroad or the time you handled a difficult situation. One time that really stands out. If it stands out, it means that it's what you remember, it's what seems the most important or the most obvious. One time that really stands out is when, and then you provide your answer. When I visited the United States for the first time. You can say the first trip that comes to mind. That comes to mind. The first trip that comes to mind is, and then you have to state that trip. My weekend camping trip with my family last month. You can say the last time I traveled somewhere new. So you're using the language from the question in your answer. The last time I handled a difficult situation was, and then a time reference, was 3 years ago. And then you go on and you state the activity. I attended my friend's wedding in Greece. Again, that's not the complete answer. You would go on and answer the full question. Here's a great one. I can clearly recall. Recall is another way of saying remember, and clearly that's your adverb. Adverbs are optional in a sentence, so when you use them, they're very impactful. It means you have a very clear image. I can clearly recall the moment when. Now, if you use this, you're setting the tone that something really memorable or amazing happened. So make sure you provide something memorable or amazing, but of course that's subjective. I can clearly recall the moment when I saw the Eiffel Tower for the first time. And then you can go on and describe that experience. Now let's talk about hypotheticals. This is when you talk about imaginary situations, often including the words if, could. For example, if you could live in any city, where would you choose? So to answer this, use that same structure. If I could live in any city, I would live in San Francisco. So you're using the same structure from the question. This is the clearest way to answer. And then of course, go on and provide your reason why. There are alternative things you can say. If I had the chance, I would definitely live in Vancouver. So if I had the chance, if this situation were available. Now you can just use I would. I would likely choose Tokyo. You can use choose instead of live in. Or likely means 50, 60%. You can make that stronger. I would definitely choose Tokyo. That means 80, 90, 95%. You can start your answer with your choice. Name the city. Seattle is a vibrant city, so I would live there if I had the chance. Notice you're just reversing the structure. So I would live there if I had the chance, if I could. You can provide the reason. Due to its proximity to my family, I would live in Seoul. This is an advanced structure because you're saying due to its proximity, but at this point you haven't defined what it is. So it creates curiosity because the person has to wait until you reveal the answer. I would live in Seoul. Let's move on to balanced answers. These are used when you want to discuss both sides instead of choosing one. For example, do you think young people prefer cities or rural areas? And you don't want to choose one. You want to provide a balanced answer. You can start by saying, well, it really depends on the person. You don't have to use well. This is more of an introduction. It doesn't provide meaning, but natives commonly use it. Well, and it shows you're reflecting on the question and you're gathering your thoughts, you're forming an opinion. It's a natural thing to do. Well, it really depends on the person. It depends on the situation. It depends on, you can provide a different noun here and then go on and discuss both sides. Or you can start with some people prefer lively cities, while others prefer quiet rural areas. So you're providing adjectives to go with both to give you something to discuss more. You can say there are good arguments on both sides. This lets the person know that you could argue positively for one and the other. And then you can go on and share those arguments. There are good arguments. Good is an adjective. You can choose a different one. There are great arguments on both sides. Alternatively, you can say there are pros and cons to both. So that means there are positives and negatives. And you can add on to the last one as well. It depends on the person. It depends on the person. And then you can discuss the person who would prefer cities and the person who would prefer rural areas. You can state that's difficult to answer. That's difficult to answer because it comes down to personal preference. It comes down to means you must consider. There's this important reason or explanation. It comes down to personal preference. Now let's review example requests. This is when you're asked to provide an example, a very common thing on your IELTS and in job interviews and in daily conversations. Can you give an example of when you worked collaboratively? So this could be for your IELTS, of course for a job interview as well. And now, the question, if the question starts with can you, acknowledge that part and say certainly, certainly. That's acknowledging the can you. It's like saying yes, I can. Certainly, for example. Certainly, for example, and then you state the situation. Last month, I was part of a project, and then you go on and describe your role and how it was collaborative. Instead of certainly, you can say absolutely. The first example that comes to mind. This means the first example I thought of, but a more advanced way is the first example that comes to mind is, and then what came to your mind? What did you think of when I joined a soccer team? Because sports is very collaborative. Or again, to acknowledge the request, can you? You can reply with I'd love to, I would, I'd love to. A great example of working collaboratively is when I was asked to organize a conference. So you're saying a great example. Or again, to say yes, definitely. The best example of working collaboratively is a project I'm on now. So your answer doesn't necessarily have to be in the past. Now, the most casual way is just to simply say, sure. One example I can share is. That's the most casual. Natives will absolutely use that. Sure. One example I can share is when I volunteered at my daughter's school. Of course, there are going to be times when you're unsure, when you don't know much about the topic, but you still need to answer. So if someone asks you, when do you think space travel will become accessible to the average person? Now they're asking you when. They expect a specific time. Be honest. Say, honestly, I don't know. But don't stop there. That's not enough to impress anyone. In a more formal situation, even when you're talking with your friends, that is a conversation killer. You need to provide more information, but you can absolutely acknowledge, honestly, I don't know. Adding honestly sounds more confident than simply saying, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but I imagine it will happen this century. So instead of providing a specific answer, you can provide a more vague or general answer. This century, that's a very long timeline, right? But you answered the question. And what happens next is important. Provide your reason why you think it will happen this century. Then you've answered this very professionally. You can say, I'm not entirely sure. Adding entirely softens it. I'm not entirely sure, but I suppose. Suppose is another way of saying think, but I suppose it could happen in the next 20 years. So again, you're providing a more general time reference rather than a specific answer. You can say, I can't say for certain, but I think my grandkids will experience this. So depending what your age is, the person you're talking to will estimate the age of your grandkids, present or future, and then understand the time reference. So that's a great strategy. Or you can say, well, I haven't thought about that before. It may happen by, and then provide a time. But well, I haven't thought about that before. This is a great way to start your answer immediately and give you time to think. And then you don't have to be precise. You can be more general. It may happen by 2035 or whatever year you feel confident providing, and then provide the reason why. Remember, we talked about saying that's a difficult question. This is the perfect time to say it. That's a difficult question. If I had to guess, I would say, so you can use I'd say or I would say in the next 100 years. So here again, you're being quite vague. You're saying any time between now and 100 years from now, in the next 100 years. If I had to guess, that makes it sound like you don't have the option. It's a requirement. If I had to guess, because you're asking me and you expect to answer, I would say in the next 100 years. Great job. I'm sure you're excited to use all of those conversation starters you just learned, but you still need to provide a full answer. Now you'll learn how to structure your answer using the PREP framework. PREP is an acronym that stands for point, reason, expand, point. Let's review each step in detail, starting with P, point. This is your main idea or opinion. You start by answering the question directly. Reason. This is where you explain why you gave that answer. E. This is where you expand on your answer. You can do that by giving more information or details, or one of the easiest ways to expand is by giving an example. So you can also think of E as example. P, point again. This is your conclusion or summary. You return to your main idea to finish your answer by saying your point again. So P is point again. Remember, it's point, reason, expand, example, point again. Let's review this using a simple scenario. Someone asks you, how was your weekend? Do you find you only answer using one-word answers like good, fine, great. Natives do this too, because they also don't know what to say. Prep quickly and easily fixes this problem. Here's how you can answer this simple question using prep. How was your weekend? Point. It was great. That's what you're comfortable doing right now. How about expand on that with the reason? Why was it great? I finally had some time to relax after a busy week. And now expand on that. So how did you relax? Provide more details. I watched a movie called Arthur the King. It's about a man and a stray dog who form a bond during a race. Now remember, you need that point again. So you need a summary, a conclusion. The best way to start this is just say, so overall, it was a relaxing and enjoyable weekend. Just what I needed. You're saying the same thing again. This is a clear, concise, and well-organized answer that sounds a lot more fluent and interesting than simply saying, it was good, or even worse, good. And now the person talking to you can ask you follow-up questions so the conversation will naturally keep going. You can answer any additional questions using the same prep method. It's the same structure every time, but of course your answer will be completely different. In the answer above, I expanded by providing details on how I relaxed. I relaxed by watching a movie. And then I gave some more details about the movie. Remember that you can think of E as example. Basically, I provided an example of how I relaxed. Let's review a completely different question you may be asked in a professional setting or even during a job interview. The question is, do you like working in teams? Let's answer that using the PREP framework. P is point. Yes, I really enjoy working in teams. Let's keep going with our reason. I think collaboration helps bring out the best ideas. Now let's provide a specific example, and you can even begin using the words for example. For example, last year my team was developing a new product. Everyone had different ideas, and by combining them, we created something truly unique. You're not done yet. You need the second P, point again. So overall, I find teamwork more creative than working alone. Notice how in the E step, I gave a real life situation. It helped explain the benefit of teamwork in a way that feels personal and authentic. Of course, you can keep expanding on this example or even provide more details to support why you enjoy working on a team. You can use the PREP framework to provide a concise 20-second answer or a longer 2-minute answer. You would simply provide more examples or more points. A good rule of thumb is a maximum of 3 points in the E section. Let's say you just got back from a vacation in Greece and your friend says, so, how was your vacation? Let's provide a full answer using the PREP framework, and we'll provide 3 points for the E section. So again, you start with point. It was awesome, even better than I expected. Don't stop there, provide the reason. I've heard great things about Greece, and it definitely lived up to the hype. Now, let's expand with 3 points. First, the food was unreal. I didn't have a single bad meal, fresh seafood, simple ingredients, and everything tasted better there. Second, the pace of life is way more relaxed. No one's rushing, and it honestly helped me relax and reset a bit. And third, the beaches were incredible, super quiet, crystal clear water, and not packed with tourists. You're not done yet. Remember, point again. So overall, our trip was amazing, and I highly recommend Greece. Of course, you could provide more details about each point. PREP gives you the flexibility to provide a clear, organized answer, and you can decide how short or how long that answer is. Another option with PREP is to choose one topic, like the food, and expand by providing 3 points on that one topic. Let's try that now with our same Greece vacation example. Point: it was awesome, even better than I expected. Reason: one of the biggest highlights was the food. That alone made the whole trip worth it. So notice here, my reason introduces the topic of food, and now I'll provide 3 points. First, even the simplest meals were incredible. We'd sit down for lunch and have grilled fish, a few dips, and fresh bread, and it was better than most dinners I've had at home. Second, the ingredients were so fresh, like tomatoes that actually taste like tomatoes. Every salad was bursting with flavor, and I usually don't get that excited about vegetables. And third, eating out felt relaxed and unhurried. We'd order a few things to share, sit outside, and just take our time. It made the meals feel like part of the day, not just something to check off. Now, you're not done. Point again. So overall, our trip was amazing, and I highly recommend Greece. Of course, you can use the prep framework in a more professional context, like in a job interview. So let's review a common question you may be asked. Tell me about a challenge you faced and how you handled it. Here's a strong prep style answer. Point: one major challenge I faced was managing a project with a very tight deadline. Reason: we only had 3 weeks, but multiple departments were involved and the scope kept changing. Expand: to solve this, I created a detailed roadmap, scheduled daily check-ins, and clearly assigned responsibilities. As a result, we delivered the project on time and the client was very satisfied. Now you're not done yet. Point again. So in the end, an alternative to overall. So in the end, dealing with this challenge helped me grow as a leader, and I feel more confident with my abilities to handle future challenges. Again, this is a relatively brief answer. You can keep providing more details to the expand section. Even in a job interview, I still recommend following the rule of 3 and limiting your points to 3 main points or examples. Now that you know what the prep framework is, it's time for you to practice. The only way you'll feel confident using the prep framework is by practicing the prep framework. You can practice by answering random questions. This is by far my favorite way to practice. Simply generate a random question, and your goal is to start talking immediately. You can do that easily by following the prep structure. It will be difficult at first, but that's the purpose of practice. The more you practice, the easier it will become. Go online and search Random Question Generator. Click the button to generate an endless supply of random questions. Then answer using prep. As a bonus tip, I highly recommend you record yourself answering these random questions. This is such a powerful way to get feedback on your answers. You can listen to yourself to notice where you paused and hesitated and think about why and how to solve that, or how many word fillers you used, and then you can develop a strategy to solve that. If you want to improve your speaking skills and gain confidence speaking, recording yourself is one of the best strategies. Prep is a powerful, flexible framework that helps you speak more fluently in English. Remember, it's point, reason, expand, and point again. Do you want me to keep helping you improve your English speaking skills? If you do, put let's go, put let's go in the comments. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can watch this lesson right now.